All right, we're giving this another shot. I am sorry. Uh, but what's up, everybody? This is Tyler with Hooksets for Free. Hope you guys are having a great night. It is Thursday, May the 12th, a little after 9 p.m. here. And I don't know what's going on with the chat, but it seems to be an issue with my live streaming tonight and was last week. So hopefully we can get this figured out. I'm going to pop the chat out so that I can at least see it as it's rolling in here. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to see it where I normally do. So it'll just be kind of off to the side, which is not a problem at all. Um, but it looks like I'm lagging a little bit, or was just a second ago. Can you guys see me okay? I see that Matt and Daniel are in here. What is up, gentlemen? Good evening to you. Happy Thursday night. Frank in the house. What's up, dude? Guys, hit that thumbs up button for me real quick. We've got 9 people in here real quick, which is awesome. Been on for a minute. Yeah, Daniel says I was lagging for a second. So hopefully we don't have any issues. If I do start to lag, keep me posted. Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I think we should be fine right now. Losing big fish. What's up, man? How you doing? Have you been fishing this week? I have not had many opportunities to get out. I just went twice. We've had another super windy week. I went today to a small pond that is a little bit isolated and protected from the wind. And there are mostly small fish in that body of water. So the objective was really just to get a line wet and catch a couple fish, because when I did go out, 3 days ago or so, not only was it super windy, but I got a sunburn um, and didn't catch anything. I noticed that there were big balls of shad up in the shallows. I did catch some of those shad by accident, trying to swim through them and fool a fish that might have been hanging nearby and feeding from below. I was using the 6 cents Quake suspending lipless crankbait, and I'll show you what that looked like here. Here is that lipless crankbait with 2 baby shad attached to it. So decent little imitation suspending lipless crankbait. I've talked about that bait before and how well I like it. The other bait that I found, and I wish Ron Holly was in here right now to talk about, but the bait that I found and did give a test run the other day when I was out was the 6 cents Trace swim bait. And I actually quite liked the action of it, though I think it's going to excel um, in slightly warmer water than what I'm dealing with right now. And so, anyway, it was good to see how that thing performs. And then today, when I was out on the water at that small pond, they weren't eating anything that was, over a couple inches big. So I really had to downsize and go back to kind of the multi-species killer that worked wonders for me last year, and throw a tiny piece of max scent. And I was actually fishing it on a drop shot with like a size 2 owner mosquito hook, and just like a 2-inch section of a max scent hitworm in the black color, and whacked them pretty good. Caught probably 6 or so fish in just about an hour before I had to go run some errands. So, uh, good little outing to catch a couple fish. But tonight's objective and topic is really to do a little unboxing for you. I have a couple packages coming in the mail over the next few days, and so you guys might get lucky and have a few unboxings over these next couple of days. I will probably go live twice in these 3 nights starting tonight. I'm not sure if I'll be on tomorrow night or if it will be Saturday night, but we shall see about that. So this is part 1, all but one bait that I ordered from Tackle Warehouse just last weekend or so. So I'm excited about most of these baits. I wish the one bait that's coming from the other warehouse was in this package because I'm excited about it too. But you guys will see it as soon as it comes in. Anthony Reeder in the house. What's up, dude? Been a while since you caught a live. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining in. Hope you're doing well. Hit that thumbs up button if you didn't already. John Smith. Yo, yo. Simon Zaire. How's it going, man? Matt says, fishing's been all right. I've noticed more activity in the river. I went Tuesday and caught a few dinks. Nothing special. Gonna try tomorrow. Right on. Okay. So, yeah, I've got this chat kind of over to the side, and it's blocking my view just a little bit. Let me see if I can narrow this down so that it doesn't block too much, and I'm still relatively centered in the picture here. So we got 10 people in here. We're 6 minutes in. 6 thumbs up. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, and we're gonna get right into this. I don't think it's a hugely substantial order from Tackle Warehouse, but fairly normal for me. Maybe somewhere in the ballpark of, I don't know, 60 or 75 bucks. Again, there's one bait that's missing from this package, and it's a $15 lure. So it'll be fun once that actually arrives. Matt has talked about it once before, but more out of curiosity and the way that the bait looks than actually recommending it and having his hands on one of them, at least to my knowledge. So we'll see about that. Anthony says, man, talk about wind here in Oklahoma. It's been super windy this year. Haven't been out much. I hear you. Going Monday as I had the day off, and it's my birthday. Well, happy early birthday, Anthony. Cheers. Hope you have a great day out on the water and an awesome year upcoming, man. All right, so I'm not going to dig to the bottom because the invoice is down there somewhere. But let's start with baits that that I already have, and then go to baits that I do not already have, so that I can talk somewhat more intelligently about the baits that I already have, and then kind of give my first impressions on the baits that I don't already have. So first up is another pack of the Yum Scottsboro swim baits, and this is a different size than what I already have. As you guys know, I've had the 3.5-inch size and have had some decent success on it so far. So I wanted to pick up a pack of this 4.5-inch size, and I got it in like the silver shiner color. What do they call it? Silver Flash Shad. And here she is. So there's a couple reasons that I got this bait in particular. If you notice, and I've mentioned this before, this color pattern is somewhat similar to the Keitech silver shiner color, I believe it's called, which I've got rigged here on this Keitech Swim Jig. And I had the idea to perhaps rig this bait on this swim jig instead, as something that might be a little bit more appropriate in a wider range of water temperatures, and just because it's got a slightly different action than the Keitech does. But this swim jig has a 5/0 hook on it and is meant to be a weedless swim jig. As you can see, it's got an EWG style hook on there, and it's not a super wide gap, but yeah, this color pattern here, I believe, is called Silver Shiner, and this one is called Silver Flash Shad. Very, very similar. That is what I've noticed about the Yum Scottsboro swim bait color patterns, is that they very closely mimic the Keitech colors. So I think this 4.5-inch size will do a good job of being a swim jig or chatterbait trailer, but more importantly, be a really good standalone swim bait on something like a 4/0 owner beast hook, or any type of exposed swim jig head that, or exposed jig head that is maybe in the ballpark of like a 4/0 hook and somewhere quarter ounce roughly. As I've talked about before, this bait does not have um, a true belly slit. It has a slot in between these fins on the belly, but it doesn't go into the belly of the bait. So you'd actually have to cut that if you wanted it to be, if you want the hookup ratio to be a bit better on like a belly weighted swim bait hook. But I think this is an awesome bait to say compare side by side with one of my favorite finesse swim baits or mid-size swim baits in the Optimum Baby Boom Boom. So this bait here comes free to a pack, has that awesome head wag with the tail kick, and I've noticed that the Yum Scottsboro baits do as well, just like you get out of the original Scottsboros. So I'm very excited to give these a shot. This is kind of that true middle size that should get a lot of bites, but also catch pretty quality fish, especially in comparison to the smaller sizes that I've already got in this 3.5. So the 3.5 is really like a finesse swim bait, and this 4.5 is more of like one size up, but will still be a great standalone swim bait. So I'm excited and couldn't help myself but at least grab one more pack of these for now. Of course, I could probably stock up on all of the sizes because at this point I do really like the way that this bait acts in the water, and already have confidence in it. So there's a good chance that I'm going to be utilizing this swim bait a fair amount this season, and they're a good deal. Every size, doesn't matter what size you get, they all come 6 in a pack and are like $5 or $6. So I think you pay about $1 per swim bait, and they're very soft and surprisingly fairly durable. So so far, so good. I'm very impressed with it, and I think it outperforms a vast majority of swim baits on the market. It will immediately jump ahead of, I talked about the 6 cents whale swim bait last week and how much I like it. I think that Scottsboro is going to jump it kind of immediately. So Ryan Dyke in the house. What's up, dog? Yeah, haven't talked to you in a while, man. Hope everything's going well way up north. Hope you guys are uh, in open water by now. I know it might not be bass season just yet, but hope you guys have open water. Temperatures are maybe slowly starting to rise for you, and that you're looking forward to getting out fishing a little bit more. Now, I know you do a lot of ice fishing in the winter anyway, but good to see you in here. Thank you for joining, man. Dave Jolly in the house. Yo, yo. I don't know if you got my message on Instagram or if you just got a notification on here, but thank you for joining. Good to see you in here, man. Matt, you do need to try the Yum Scottsboro swim baits. They are good. Daniel says he's happy with them too. So while on the topic of swim baits in that same size range, and one of my all-time favorites, but a new color pattern for me is this herring HD color of the Beast Coast Miyagi swimmer. So this looks like a really cool shad pattern. They call it HD herring, but to me it looked pretty shaddy in the pictures, and so I wanted to see what it's about in real life, and I like it. So this guy has kind of like a subtle faded green, olive green back, little bit of more of like a silver than translucent side to it with some blue flash on there. It's got the gills painted, and yeah, gorgeous looking swim bait. So unlike the Yum Scottsboro swim bait, this guy actually does have a deep belly slot and is built around a 6/0 owner beast hook, and I've talked about this bait before. I've got a couple of packs right here, and I fish this bait somewhat frequently. Uh, I really the action on it. It's got a little bit more dramatic of a kick than those last two baits that I mentioned in the Optimum Baby Boom Boom and the Yum Scottsboro swim bait. So meant to truly be fished weedless on an owner beast hook. This thing swims stable, has a lot of tail, more than it does head, but does still have a little bit of a head wag to it. But there's just something about the action and the softness of this bait. These things are loaded with scent straight in the pack. The way that they are poured is a mechanical hand pour. So super high quality baits, and now they're making them in these HD color patterns. And this one to me screamed gizzard shad, even though they have an HD gizzard shad color. I believe that was sold out at Tackle Warehouse, and this one looked really good to me. So decided to pick that one up, and we'll be adding it to my collection. So 2 packs of soft swim baits. One pack of depths cover scats. Now, I have not thrown this bait enough to develop confidence in it just yet. So, did I get this just because? Yeah, kind of. But the reason that I got it is that initially I picked up 1 pack of 3 different sizes of this bait. They make them in a 2.5, a 3.5, and a 4. And I will say the 2.5 is really small. The 3.5 is big, but not overwhelmingly big. And the 4-inch, even though it's a ½ inch bigger, is like way fatter, feels like a giant bait. So to me, seeing them in person, I noticed right away that for me and the way that I fish and for the fish that I target, the 3.5-inch size is going to be ideal for me. So when I first picked these up, I got them from, I think, the Hookup Tackle, and I was subject to the colors that were available. And then shortly thereafter, Tackle Warehouse got a shipment of these in as well. And just so happened that they had the 3.5-inch size in this blue melon or blue marin. I don't know exactly what they call it, but this awesome color that is like a June bug back and this orangey belly. So really love this color pattern, but I only had it in the 2.5-inch. I've got the black color in the 3.5-inch and a green pumpkin 4-inch. So I think this guy is going to be my go-to for, say, clear water. And the black is going to be my go-to for most other situations. Quite frankly, there are some clear water situations where I will throw that one as well, kind of interchangeably with this one. But I'm excited to have these nonetheless. Even if they seem perhaps a little bit gimmicky and I don't use the heck out of them this year, I do think they will work their way into my rotation at some point. I just need to develop the confidence and put the time into these baits because, like I've mentioned before, and pretty much anyone and everyone is saying about this bait, is that it is the most in demand soft plastic in Japan now and has been for a few years now. And they've been very difficult to get your hands on. So the fact that I can get a handful of packs is great, but they are like $11 for a 6-pack, so they're not cheap. And I don't know exactly when and where I'm going to use them. Essentially, they're supposed to be like a bottom fishing bait that is like a Senko. If you didn't know, the Yamamoto Senko was designed to be a soft plastic jerk bait instead of what we now associate with a stick bait in being, a Texas rig or wacky rig bait with that shimmy on the fall coming down vertically. That is kind of what we think of when we think of soft plastic stick baits. But originally, the Senko was designed to be a twitch bait, and essentially, that is what the cover scat is as well. Is a twitch bait, but meant to be fished low and slow, and just kind of soak on bottom. And so it'll be interesting to see whether that technique remains how people envision how that bait is supposed to be used, or if it evolves over time and somebody discovers some secret sauce to using the cover scat, um, and perhaps that's me, perhaps it's somebody else. But regardless, that is a weightless bait meant to be fished on an EWG style hook or a worm hook, depending on the type of cover that you're fishing around. Um, just a weedless hook and weightless. So it is not supposed to fall fast. And it is that subtle action that is supposed to get the fish's attention on bottom, whether it's dead sticked on bottom and soaking, or just on a little twitch, make that thing kind of dart around and then slow sink back to the bottom. So I'm interested, but I picked up one more pack of the cover scats. Daniel says, I've never caught a walleye before. It's on my list for this year. I've got one lake here that has walleye. Nice. Yeah, walleye fishing is fairly common around here. And there are a handful of places where I can go to target them, but just don't all that frequently. Um, I have caught a handful of walleye, but just not very many of them. Um, it tends to be more of a seasonal thing. In fact, a couple places that they are have really healthy populations. They have pretty strict regulations, and I think just about now is when the season is open to start targeting them because they do spawn earlier in the year and in colder water. So that happened like a month ago, and I think it's now open to start targeting them. But really, kind of late summer and through the fall is, at least as I understand it, some of the best time to target walleyes up shallow, especially along rocky riprap banks. So, yeah, Matt, it does kind of look like a scum perch color pattern, that blue marin or blue melon. It's hard to tell whether it's actually blue marin or if, say, the Japanese thought they were spelling blue melon and were using a translator or something, and because their L's sound like R's, it showed up as blue marin on the package. Uh, but the package that I have doesn't have any English writing on it. I just noticed that when I got them from the hookup tackle that it did say uh, blue marin, I think. Shoot. My 4-year-old daughter is crying right now. She's been struggling to sleep, so hang tight for me 1 second, guys. What's up? Sorry. Um, Hope you guys enjoyed the clicking in the background. Frank says walleye season opens for me on Saturday, but so does pike. Luckily, I'm equally likely to catch them both in the waters around me. Nice, dude. John says, Tyler, you should try the TK Twister. I like it. I fish it like a subsurface walking bait, but it's super versatile. You can backglide it or even fish it like a frog. The TK Twister. I don't know that I'm familiar with that bait, man. That sounds interesting, but I should check it out, huh? Ralph, yo, says, hey man, finally made a real channel. It's me, Pickle Throat. Justin. Well, why does it say Ralph Johan? Is that some sort of inside joke or the name of your channel? I thought your name was Justin, man. Adam says, so question. I found a little pond with really deep holes and rocks. Okay, nice. I tried Texas rig and a Ned rig, but kept losing baits and getting caught in the rocks. Suggestions of what the best thing is to try. So the depth cover scat is good for that, especially on a weightless rig. So that is the thing, is you should probably try something weightless so that when it's getting near those rocks, that it doesn't get wedged nearly as easily. Weightless bait is probably your best bet. Maybe a suspending jerk bait, some sort of suspending bait or a floating bait that you can get down there and then it will back out and that you can work back up toward you. So, yeah, interesting. Deep holes and rocks. Part of it is just getting used to the water that you're fishing and understanding where those snaggy areas are. So I hate to say it, but you might even want to try something with like a slip bobber or some other type of float so that you can control the depth that your bait is sitting above the cover, and then use a lightweight jig head or even something weightless if it's salted, and get it down close to the fish and see kind of where they like to stage and hang out, where you're more likely to get bites before you start to get a little bit more ballsy with actually picking that cover apart. But perhaps something that deflects well, something that is buoyant, or something that is weightless on the soft plastic side would be kind of my main recommendations, man. So your name is Justin. That's just for uploading Twitch videos. Okay, man. Fair enough. Chicken Fried Steak says, howdy, everyone. What's shaking? I'll shake down street. Yo, my man. How you doing? TK Twister. Is that an Australian bait or what? Where can we get those baits here in the US? Because I'm not looking it up right now, but I will check it out a little bit later. Matt says the TK Twister is a mega bass bait. Interesting. I did not know that. And Dave, you're absolutely right. It is hard to beat a weightless Senko in pond. Uh, Not always the most fun thing to fish, but it's fun to catch fish. So, fun to fish lures or fun to catch fish uh, depends on how you look at it, right? As long as you're catching fish, that is what is more important. So, um, yeah, when you're trying out a new body of water and you're having the issue of getting snagged up, it probably has to do with the bottom composition and you not being familiar enough with it and how to crawl through it, or you're using too heavy of weights if you're fishing weighted soft plastic baits. And it sounds like both are perhaps the issue there. So Adam says there's springs with caves. People used to swim in there, but too many deaths. Interesting. Unfortunate that a lot of people were dying in there, but sounds like a really cool place to fish, man. Do you know that there's fish in there for sure? All right, on to the next bait. Just kidding. I'm not marling baits, but All right, let's go through another bait that I don't have. This is relatively new to the market as of this past off season, and they've been kind of difficult to get your hands on. I don't fish this type of bait frequently, but I think the design of it is really interesting, and I have a feeling that I'm going to catch fish on this almost right away, especially given what I just showed you guys um, with what size the shad are right now in the one body of water that I was fishing this past week that I go to somewhat frequently. So you can see these shad on the treble hooks. They're probably 2.5 inches long. They're about the same size as that lipless crankbait I was using. So boom, here we are with the 6 cent gyro tail spinner bait. So I don't fish tail spinners all that frequently, and quite honestly, they're not a super common bait on the market. Um, it's kind of its own genre that is a little different than, say, a blade bait, but still a cool concept nonetheless. And 6 Cents has done something a little bit different than the average tail spinner on the market. So this is a plastic injected bait. Most tail spinners, like blade baits, tend to be a metal, and they tend to be really thin, whereas this bait, if you can see, has some girth to it. Look at the thickness of that body. So this thing is going to travel through the water a bit differently than a traditional tail spinner and put out a decent thump and vibration. Although it's meant to track straight through the water, and it's got this Colorado style blade on it. Maybe it's more of an Indiana, but uh, it's a nickel colored blade. This is, I believe, the Shad Burst color, and it looks very realistic. And so it's not just the small profile and the fact that it's got a tail spinner on it that attracts me, as well as the fat body, but it's also the fact that this one single treble hook on here is not only high quality and is an EWG style hook that fits this bait perfectly. It's probably a size 4 if I had to guess. But the coolest feature on this bait is that it has a swiveling hook hanger. So, really cool design there. Prevents the fish from getting leverage. As you can see, the line tie is on top of the bait, so this would be a good bait for fishing vertically or on a straight retrieve. And I'm excited to have it and give it a go. I think it's going to make a good multi-species bait, but obviously I will use it primarily for bass, and I think that's what it will do best with. I believe this thing is fairly heavy for its size, as most tail spinners are, but compared to other tail spinners, I think it's not all that heavy. So this is a 3/4 ounce, 2-inch bait, and on the back of the package, they say, jig it, cast it, yo-yo it, burn it. And sounds about right. So that is next on the list, and I've got just 4 more things in this package. Let's start with, and they're all soft plastic. So let's start with one that I don't already have and am really excited to give a shot. And so Adam says, yeah, he caught 2 on a Texas rig baby goat. Interesting. What size hook were you using? Like a size 1 odd? Texas rigging a baby goat seems a little bit challenging, but it's a great bait. I've talked about all of the goat baits and how much I like them. Um, In fact, I've got a whole big stack of them here. And here's the baby goat right here. I've got the baby goat rigged on the Mini Max Chatterbait and think it's an awesome trailer. And yeah, I've fished it mostly as a jig trailer and a chatterbait trailer, but not really as much of a Texas rig bait. But Bruce Nichols in the house, my man. Did you get my message on Instagram or did you get a notification here on YouTube? All right, so as you can see, this bait here is made from Molix, and I've talked about Molix a handful of times. I don't think I have their other soft baits sitting here right in front of me because I took them with me recently, but I love the packaging and just how small, they make the packaging custom to the size of the bait. So this is their, what do they call it? Flexible and bite-proof floating compound. They don't have a name for the style of plastic, but it is an elastomer style bait. And so, sorry, my wife is calling right now, and I did not tell her that I took my meds and that I was going to stream. All right. That should be fine. Okay, so this bait right here is called the Molix RT Fork Flex. So this is a soft plastic jerk bait. And I can't quite tell if it's meant to be more of a jerk bait or like a chatterbait trailer. But as you can see, it comes in this clamshell packaging that has, a top and a bottom. So they don't just automatically fall out. You do have to kind of separate the top from the bottom. But it's well designed. So you can pop that out and let's check one of these guys out. This color here is called Watermelon Silver Shad. And it is a very subtle watermelon top and then mostly silver, little bit of transparency on the bottom. So as you can see, this tail runs horizontal to the bait. So this is kind of like a what would it be the equivalent of? More of like a traditional chatterbait trailer than like a fluke because the tail is up and down and not sideways as it is. But I think it would have a good darting action if rigged and fished like a fluke, but I can't quite tell. I think this bait's going to make a great chatterbait trailer on a smaller chatterbait. So that's something that I can't quite tell just peeking at it. I want to rig it on a chatterbait, but I don't have a great one. So where I've got this, 5-inch Strike King Z2 soft plastic jerk bait, and its tail is the other direction. I think this could be a great trailer on the same type of bait. So I was mostly just curious to see what this thing looks like in person. It is super, super stretchy, very durable. The color looks great. It's got a whole bunch of like gold flake in there, if you can see that. Of course, it's not going to focus on there when I stretch it out, but it almost looks like it's got two eyes poured on there, but it's just the way that it looks. And anyway, this is intriguing bait, but might not necessarily make its way into my regular arsenal. I wanted to see what it was about because I've tried two of the other Molex flex baits. They have three others, and they're all Ned rig baits, I believe. One is the flex stick, which I really like as a traditional Ned rig bait. Just a stick bait that's like 2 3/4 inches. One is the Freaky Flex, which is a wild looking creature style bait, and is an awesome little Ned rig and drop shot bait. And then they have a Flex Craw, which doesn't look quite as appealing to me, so I never picked that up. But this Fork Flex looked intriguing, at least as a chatterbait trailer and maybe a swim jig trailer or potentially a soft plastic jerk bait. So we'll see about that. I decided to just give them a shot, add them to my cart as a little bit of an impulse purchase. I don't know really what specifically I'm going to do with it, but I will give it a shot. Those baits are super durable. They come scented straight out of the pack, and I do recommend the other Molex flex baits, but we'll have to see about this one. Oh my gosh, Bruce says never fails. The dog has to go take a dump again. And yeah, Bruce, I knew about that. Jackhammers are $11.99 at Omnia right now. They were that price or just a little bit cheaper at Discount Tackle earlier this week, but I think they've jumped up just a little bit in the past few days. So yeah, if you're looking to get Jackhammer Chatterbaits, I would recommend going to Omnia right now. If you're looking to save some dough, you can get them for $11.99. Frank says there are lots of EWG Ned heads and other ones with wire weed guards. Can't remember what Z-Man calls theirs. They call it a weedless finesse shrooms jig head. But they also now make an EWG style Ned head as well. And both are good. But honestly, if you're fishing a Ned rig in that area, Adam, you're going to want to let it soak and do a lot of dead sticking and not move the bait a lot out of the strike zone. As you start to get closer to those rocks and where you hung up before, you're going to want to, pull up and reel it in, get out of there kind of as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I think you're going to need to kind of bump bottom, but not drag bottom, and risk getting caught in those rocks again. Daniel says, if you want to stay with Z-Man, they say their football Neds is going good through rocks. Yeah, I look forward to trying the football Neds this season as well. I've got a pack of them sitting somewhere here. I opened them for you guys not all that long ago. In fact, didn't I rig one of these up recently? I forget what bait specifically I put on it. Maybe a I think I put like a baby rage bug or something on there. But yeah, the Z-Man football Neds is a good option for fishing a Ned rig around rock, but it doesn't have a weed guard on it. So something to keep in mind. Also, the weights do not come super light. 1/8 ounce is the lightest weight that they make. So tough to tell whether that would be good in the waters that you're fishing. I don't know. Bruce says false alarm, back for now. Okay. Dave asks, Tyler, have you tried the Hog Farmer Spunk Shad as a chatterbait trailer? That is one of the very few baits that is made to be a chatterbait trailer that I do not have and have not tried at this point. No particular reason, but no, I have not. So it is fairly similar to a lot of other baits out there, but really it's kind of a hybrid between two styles of bait. So you get like um, the standard segmented or jointed chatterbait trailers like the Yamamoto Seiko and the Z-Man Razor Shads. Now there's a number of baits out there like that. And then you go to the less conventional, say, um, straight tail worm, like I mentioned recently in the Keitech Easy Shaker, that has kind of a tapered profile and a skinny tip to it. And really, the Spunk Shad bridges that gap. It almost has the nose and the first part of the body is more like a Keitech swim bait, but then the back half of it really tapers down and comes down more like the Keitech Easy Shaker, and it has a really good kind of swim and wag behind it, so it creates a little bit more bulk in the body under the skirt than say the Keitech Easy Shaker would. So that's a good thing, but you get a lot of the same tail action as you would out of a straight tail worm. And most people don't throw straight tail worms as chatterbait trailers, but they do work remarkably well on spinner baits and chatterbaits. That's something that I know that Jim, Tackle Junkie, talks about it a fair amount, or at least has in the past. And it kind of turned me on to that idea. And a few years ago, I did it a fair amount and had some really good success on it. So it is something that I will occasionally do and do recommend at least trying out. But no, I'll say that specific bait, the Spunk Shad from Hog Farmer, is one that I haven't tried, but I know has a great reputation as a chatterbait trailer. Frank says, "Oh, don't forget to go as light as possible. Weedless will keep the hook from getting stuck, but if the head is too big and heavy, it'll get weighted in there." Yeah, that wedged in there. That's exactly what I'm saying. Um, and if he's getting hung up from a 1/10 ounce jig head, I think that could be more the problem than getting snagged. I think he's just getting stuck in the rocks more than anything. But Adam, you tell us what your observations are as for where and why you got hung up. Um, I know you appreciate it, and I think it's awesome that everybody's kind of chiming in and helping give a little bit of perspective and advice when it comes to how to navigate that little body of water that you recently found. Bruce says 7.99. I would have uh, overdraft and had a pile sitting here because why? Oh, Anthony says local academy had jackhammers. Some were 11.99, and I got some for 7.99. Jeez, dude. 7.99 for a jackhammer chatterbait is outrageous. I've never heard of a deal that good before. Uh, but yeah, I would have stocked up for sure. I probably would have spent $100 and gotten a dozen of them. If we're being honest. Matt says, Tyler, have you ever tried using the double hooks or twin hooks for wood style cranks for the front hook to allow less snagging and then put regular treble on the back? I have not tried that, uh, but I understand that some guys do that, and and I think it's a reasonable idea for sure. But no, that is, I don't own any double hooks instead of treble hooks. Would not necessarily look to do that. Now, I have, on the other hand, used single hooks for the same purpose, but usually on smaller profile baits, and usually not on probably wood style wide body crankbaits that you're thinking about. More like jerkbait profile minnow style crankbaits and jerkbaits. Um, and when I'm fishing for multiple species, and it's as much about protecting the fish from getting a treble hook stuck in their face as it is about staying weedless. So, no, I haven't tried that, but I do think that it's a reasonable idea just because the hook is going to stay tighter to the body than what you get with a treble hook. But I haven't tried it before, so I can't quite speak on that. Anthony says, "Yeah, I bought a couple of them. Didn't need to buy a ton of them." Yeah, I hear you. I don't need to buy any of them, but I probably still would have bought a bunch of them, and then maybe given away a few or a handful just for the fun of it because that deal's too good, man. Unbelievable. You say the big bite baits swim on. The Kamikaze Swim On is an awesome chatterbait trailer. I agree. It is a great chatterbait trailer. I've got a couple packs of those. I don't use it as much uh, as some of the other tried and true chatterbait trailers. It's almost like Ned rig baits at this point. Uh, the market has been flooded with chatterbait trailers and Ned rig soft plastics over the last handful of years that there's almost too many of them to try. And so I've gotten them for the sake of trying them. And then just because there's so many, they don't all make their way into my regular rotation. And so, yeah, I've used it before. I like it quite a lot. I just don't regularly use it. And I'm not exactly sure why. You said forgot to mention they were the stealth blades. Oh, dude, you're right. That is probably the reason they were on sale. They probably heard me dogging on them. The stealth blade likely has not sold as well as anticipated over the last couple of years since it was released, and for good reason. Um, the Jackhammer Chatterbait is the king, and for a reason, and it is the sound, the Jackhammer. I can't even come close to making the sound above water as it does in the water with drag, but this blade makes a ton of contact with the head. It's super, super loud in the water, and the Stealth Blade Jackhammer does not even deserve to have the name Jackhammer in it because this thing is quiet. It makes very little contact with the head of the bait because um, it wants to be a chatterbait. So, in order to maintain its vibration, it has to stay a little bit tighter. It doesn't have the ability to travel all the way to the point of making regular contact with the head. And because it has the freedom to do that, but the blade isn't big enough to allow for that, it has a somewhat irregular action. And and I haven't been a huge fan of it. So Adam says, I think I'm getting stuck on ledges or rocks. Okay. Walked all the way around to the bank on the opposite. My snag sometimes would come loose. So interesting. Yeah, it could be either one, quite frankly. If there's a steep ledge there, you could be hung just on the ledge itself, or you could be wedged in some rocks. And regardless, if you were able to make it around to the other side and pull it loose, it's hard to say which it probably was. I don't know. Matt says the Megabass Balsa cover crank comes with twin hooks on the rear and a wire on each side of the crank that keeps the hooks from getting snagged on wood like the Timber Tigers. What? Uh, a wire on each side of the crank? What do you mean, like a wire weed guard type of thing? That sounds freaky, and I don't know how I feel about that. Frank says jackhammers are 25 bucks Canadian. So if you find some that you'd like to give away, I'll take one. Uh, well, yeah. How much does it cost to ship a jackhammer from me to you? Because if you'll cover shipping, I'll hook you up, dude. Robert says I mod the blades to get more thump, less thump, or to turn the thump off until I work it. All right, Robert, tell us a little bit more about that. I assume you're talking about on the original Jackhammer, but do you and can you mod the Stealth Blade? How would you recommend modifying the Stealth Blade Jackhammer in order to get more thump out of that thing and make more contact with the head itself? Because I think it's a problem with the design and the size of the blade. You know, this the eye on the front of the jig head is big enough to allow for enough travel for it to hit, but the size of the blade is small enough to where this thing isn't traveling all that far as it's coming through the water. And when it does, it usually gets kind of stuck and you have to pop it to get it to start to run right. So yeah, original metal blades, I agree. You can totally bend where they are bent. You know, some chatterbaits come and usually not Z-Man chatterbaits, but some bladed jigs will come with just straight blades. You know, and a good example of that is like the Queen Tackle switchblade. Those don't come pre-bent, so you have to do that yourself. And obviously, the more dramatic that you bend it down, the more thump you're going to get, vice versa. But how do you get it to say not thump until you quote unquote work the bait? I'm curious about that. You say you bend the sides to change the geometry. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so tell me more. Are you talking about the sides here or the sides here? I assume you're talking about down here so that it's almost like a all the way curved in blade, which sounds pretty wild. Never thought to do that, man. Matt says, yeah, it's a titanium wire guard on each side of the bait that run through the balsa bait. Pretty crazy. That sounds pretty crazy. Absolutely. All right, Frank, let's talk offline, dude. I'll hook you up with a couple Jackhammer Chatterbaits if you cover shipping. Dude, let's talk about how to make that happen. And Matt says epic. Eric had some on his website. Not sure if it's still in stock, but best place to find them. And hand painted by TK Stanley. Nice, nice. Well, I've never heard about that bait, Matt, and I'm not surprised that you would be the one to inform us of it. Sounds crazy. So next up is a bait that I unboxed like I don't know a few weeks back or a month ago, and that is the Savage Gear Duratec Dragon Tail Slug. Okay, now last month I showed you this guy, and this is, as you can see, the 5-inch size. This one that I just got right now is the 4-inch size. So last year they came out with this bait. I think they had it in some bigger sizes, but it might not have been Duratec. I think it was just the Dragon Tail Slug in like a standard PVC material, and now it's in their elastomer material, but in the 4 and the 5-inch sizes. So they do make and have made a Ned Dragon Tail Slug that is a 3-inch bait, and I fished it last year. I like it. Or did it just come out this year? I can't remember. I don't know. There's a couple of Ned baits made from Duratec by Savage Gear, but I like their craw. I like their what do they call it? The salamander. And this Dragon Tail Slug looks really cool. So the 5-inch is a bait that I'm going to mostly Nico rig or throw on a shaky head because it's a little bit larger in profile. Show you real quick. This is a fairly fat bait. and size-wise, it's going to be a little too long to be a chatterbait trailer. So I think it's going to make an awesome worm style bait, whether you're throwing it on a shaky head, Texas rig, or on a Nico rig. So you can use one of those Z-Man Nico weights and throw it right up into the nose of the bait so that this thing will nose down on bottom. And then because it's made of Duratec, you don't have to put an O-ring on here. And an O-ring would be relatively hard to fit around this bait because this is probably as thick as like a, I don't know, 7-inch Senko, something like that. It's a very thick bait. And so cool thing is you can just rig your wacky style hook right through the middle of this bait. Because this is solid through the first half of the bait. Literally, this whole section is solid. And then this whole section, which is probably the last 45% of the bait, is segmented and really thin, going to catch a lot of water. I would probably rig the hook about halfway down the meaty portion and not all the way up here. You're not going to get quite as much action out of it as you will if you rig it lower, and that tail's going to do a lot more for you. So Nico rig is how I primarily see this 5-inch dragon tail slug. Whereas when I noticed that they make this in a 4-inch as well, and it's not that I just noticed it. I revisited this bait after seeing it in person, and I thought, you know what? I got the 5-inch originally because I think it's the same price for the same amount of baits, and I could see myself doing more with it. And then I got to thinking about it and realized I think this 4-inch bait could make an awesome chatterbait trailer. And not just a chatterbait trailer, but I think it could do great on an underspin. I think it could do great on like a rig like this that I've got. You know, like a soft plastic spy bait type of thing, more just on a straight retrieve through the column. So this is just a straight pearl ice type of color, they call it, Albino Flash. So let me rig this on a jackhammer for you and see just how sexy it looks, because I already know it's going to be wicked. So I'm going to grab a pearl white jackhammer, line this business up, and see that it's going to come out just past the halfway mark on this slit on the back of the bait. You can see that it's got a rigging slot on the top as well as on the bottom. So cool feature about that guy. And now the other good thing about Elastec, Duratec, all of these materials is that even if you don't rig it perfect the first go around, you can back it out and give it a go another time. It's not the end of the world. So, you know, it is a challenge to push this thing up over the keeper and get it on there right and get it on there straight. So you kind of have to do a little bit of maintenance work in pulling the neck up over the keeper so that it doesn't look all twisted and weird on you. And it still might when all is said and done. So, you know, I might have to play with this after the fact, but let's go ahead and throw the skirt down. I have not cut the skirt on this jackhammer yet. So as you can see, it runs about a good 1/2 inch or so below the hook. So I will trim this skirt, no doubt. It's just I don't have a pair of scissors right here on me. I only have a pair of pliers, and that's not going to do it. So You just got to use your imagination and picture the skirt being a ½ inch shorter and this dragon tail slug hanging out behind the bait. And you can just see how much wiggle this thing's going to have on it. So I think this is going to make a pretty sweet chatterbait trailer. At least that was my general idea with this. I think this would, this is essentially a big TRD size. And I think it's going to be good on, a larger Ned rig. Like Z-Man makes the Power Finesse Shrooms. It has like a size 1/0 hook on there. I think this would still make a good Nico rig bait. But I really did get this with the idea to throw it on the back of a chatterbait. So, like I said, I'm going to trim this skirt down just a hair, about a quarter or a ½ of an inch. And I think this Duratec Dragon Tail Slug's going to work. It is scented, and I like the way that it's built. I think it's going to be super durable. I will say I have prioritized Z-Man and Elastec style baits on the back of my jackhammers over the last year or so. As you guys saw on this Green Pumpkin Shad one, I've got that Strike King Z2 fluke style bait on there, and these things they'll last forever. I used the goat on the back of a black and blue jackhammer last summer, and it lasted like over a month. I didn't even have to cut it off and tie anything else on. It was just working so well for me. You see that I've got a goat on this cross-eyes chatterbait that matches up super awesome. So, oh, Hellabass, what's up, dude? How you doing, Rich? I saw your live stream from last night with Debo. I just checked it out today on the replay, but pretty sweet talk about frogs, man. It got me thinking, got me excited about fishing a frog this upcoming year. I agreed with a lot of what you said. Say about the frog fur, a lot about what Debo said about the Jackal Cara. You guys did talk about this bait specifically, but you kind of touched on the topic when you were talking about the furbit frog, and I'm curious to see how much of an issue this tail is on the evergreen shower blows frog. This is a big body frog, about 3 inches in length, so it's a much bigger frog. It is super soft, has great hooks on it, but I see this because of the nose and it being a shower blows type of bait. I really see it as more of an open water frog bait and something that hopefully won't collect as much in the way of weeds and things like that. So I don't know why my fan just kicked on. Sorry about that, guys. So, Rich, the trailer is actually the Savage Gear Duratec Dragon Tail Slug. Not necessarily meant to be a chatterbait trailer, but that is how I envisioned using this 4-inch size of this bait. I was just mentioning that I had picked up last month the 5-inch version of this bait with the idea to use this on a Nico rig. I think it's going to be an ideal size. And they do make a Ned rig size as well that I have, but I saw this 4-inch being a pretty sweet chatterbait trailer when you've got a skirt that is trimmed down. So they don't make it in a million colors, and I don't know how well it's going to do when trying to imitate much other than, say, a shad, which is why I picked up this all white color. And yeah, looks pretty sweet. Sorry, I'm not caught up on comments. Rich, what are you saying? Good. Oh, good components for your money. What was Adam asking? Oh, Dobbins. Got it. Okay. What's Debo's verdict on the Kara? I don't know that he had too much of an actual verdict, so much as just like general thoughts on it, right? And the fact that this is a finesse frog. So, especially when you look at it side by side next to the shower blows frog, I mean, it is so much smaller. This is a tiny little frog, so that is the thing. It's a really good walking frog with that pointy nose, and it does have a very flat belly. It's good for skipping. It's good uh, for fishing mats, but obviously not heavily weighted. Now, for its size, I think this thing does still weigh a half of an ounce, and even though it doesn't look like it's got quite enough clearance to have an excellent hookup ratio, it does have, in my opinion, quite a bit better hookup ratio than its bigger brother in the Gavacho. And we talked about this last week when we talked about JDM baits and talked about frogs for a few minutes. And I think a big part of it is because of the way that this hook is designed around the body and the fact that even though these hooks are already technically turned up, they do not clear the body at all. Um, it's like the body is too big or the hook is not big enough. And so this has to collapse quite a lot for you to have just enough clearance. It's not a horrible hookup ratio, but it's not nearly as good as you might think or hope for. You have to have them perfectly engulf the frog, and you have to whack them just right in order to get them just right. Rich says I caught a 5-pounder on my first cast with a bladed jig tonight. Dude, congrats on that. That sounds awesome. Nice. I am waiting to catch a 5-pounder as soon as possible, and I'm jealous. What kind of bladed jig were you using? What color? How were you retrieving the bait? Give us a little. You see, I think it was a 1099 slash tramp stamp type of color. Okay. Was it a Reaction Innovations bait? Okay, Thunder Cricket. Yeah, no, I throw a Thunder Cricket um a lot less than a jackhammer, obviously, because I throw a jackhammer so much more than all other bladed jigs, but it is still probably my number two in terms of most thrown chatterbaits. I throw it as kind of a 1-2 punch, and I will go straight to it if I'm in places where I know that I want to uh, burn a chatterbait, or where I know that jackhammers are thrown very frequently, or where I have thrown a jackhammer a lot over the past couple of seasons. It's just got a different and more subtle vibration to it that I think the fish respond better to, that have gotten somewhat conditioned to a jackhammer. Uh, it's a really well made bladed jig for sure. Anthony says, I'm not a good frog fisher, but I will be getting some Booyah pad crashers. I have 0 right now. Also, just got a frog combo together. Lose TP1X, 7.3 heavy, and a lose LFS. Nice. Sounds like a good combo, man. Um, yeah. Booyah Pad Crasher is a good frog, no doubt. Uh, I've modified a few of them. As you can see, this one I turned into, you know, ultra vibe pad crasher, if you will. This is kind of a take on the Toad Runner and the tackle sprinker, just removing the legs and putting in some swivels, split rings, and an owner's CPS spring, and then taking the tails off of some old Ultra Vibe speed worms that were already worn out, and just screwed them on here. This has kind of an interesting action. Doesn't quite get the exact kick that you would think out of it, but interesting still. Rich, we should talk about frogs sometime. I've got a fairly big box as well, and have, you know, a lot of the same favorites as you, but also not necessarily. There are some that I throw a lot that you do not. And I know you mentioned that you have kind of the predecessor to this bait, but I do think that you need to give the live target frogs a real go. I think that the standard size live target frog is one of the best out there. You know, they make it in 3 different sizes. I showed this comparison not all that long ago. It's crazy how the big guy is huge. That's side by side compared to the middle size, and then here's side by side compared to the little dude. But this middle size, the standard, it's probably like it could be a 60 size. Let's compare it to, say, a Spro Bronzeye. Well, maybe it's more of a 55. Because I think this Spro is a 60. And this Spro is a 50. Well, they're closer. I don't know. But I also like the Bronzeye frogs. I like the Terminator frogs. The Pad Crashers. The Strike King Sexy Frog. A lot of the frogs you were talking about. But interesting, you skipped that Thunder Cricket under a dock, huh? Oh no, you forgot to bring your frog box and your frog rods to the tournament. That's brutal. Well, I guess that's YouTube getting in the way, man. So I've got one more bait in this tackle warehouse package. And I honestly, I got it just because I'm curious, right? Rich talked about this bait for a second last night, and I've talked about it a number of times. But the Geek Crack Bellows Gill is an awesome bait. And Rich, just like you, I also recently picked up the Bellows Stick in the 5/8 and the 8-inch. Look forward to trying that bait this year. But last year, I had the opportunity to try the Bellows Gill in the 2.8 and the 3.8 inch. And I found that the 2.8 inch caught a ton of really little fish. And because it's a pretty brittle bait and super salted, you have to rig it on a screw lock style hook or nose rig it, or you have to get creative with the way that you're fishing it so as to not just blow through the whole pack really quickly. It can be a real problem. So the 3.8 inch, I found that it immediately culled out all of the fish that were like smaller than 12 inches. Really big deal. And that is really my confidence size of that bait. But it's still a not so durable bait. It's got a really unique scent to it, really cool action on it. And I think a big part of that is the ribbing on it, but also the salt content in it. So it is meant to be fished weightless. As I've mentioned before, this year I'm going to be trying it on a Nico rig because of the accessory that that Geek Crack makes that I picked up. And that's this guy, the Nico Hack, which literally you stick through the middle of the bait. So this guy's going to anchor on one side of the bait, and then you can see the hole. You're going to rig your hook through there and then cut the excess pointy part off so that this plastic is flush with the bait, and then it's almost like an O-ring that's rigged through the center of the bait. Really cool concept there, and I am curious to try that thing on a Nico rig, but durability is an issue. Now, I'm not a huge fan of knockoff baits, but I gotta say, I saw the Thunderhawk Grenade come out recently, and I wanted to at least see what it's about because it is a blatant knockoff of the Bellows Gill. Okay, I mean this is freaking the same bait, right? And this is the same size, the 3.75 inch. And I think these guys came on. Did they come on the? Whose live stream did they go on recently? Was it Smallmouth Crush or was it somebody else? So as you can see, this is the same profile as the Bellows Gill. In fact, I ought to just pull one out for the sake of a side-by-side comparison because this is about as blatant as it gets. Of course, now I'm going to have this super oily popcorn stuff on my hands, but so what? This is for science, right? Take a look at this thing, guys. So size-wise, the Bellows Gill is actually just a hair bigger, a little longer, and the taper is a little slower, whereas you get a little bit more tail out of the grenade, if you will. Now you can't see just how much ribbing there is versus the thickness of the body on the Bellows Gill, but I will say it's the same. So the grenade is a straight up knockoff of the Bellows Gill, all the way down to roughly how much meat is in the head. Though you'll notice it's a little thicker on the grenade than it is on the Bellows Gill, but this is the same bait, okay? Now, the main reason that I got this bait is not just because I'm curious and I have confidence in this profile and this action, but I guess it's got a little bit of scent on it. But this guy is made from an elastomer style of plastic, which I find interesting. So one of the major downsides to the Bellows Gill is its durability. And I think this is going to be where this bait comes into play. Now, just like with like all elastic baits, I think you are going to need to rough it up a bit and stretch it out before using it in order to get the maximum amount of action out of it. But I'm curious to see how and where this thing will perform best because, like I said, the Bellows Gill needs to be thrown on a weightless rig primarily. And because this bait is made from an elastomer style plastic, it's going to be buoyant. So you can't literally throw this thing weightless, and that's a problem. So in terms of how I caught fish on the Bellows Gill last year, this bait's going to be different. I'm going to need to throw this thing on a Tokyo rig. I'm going to need to throw this thing on a drop shot, or like I was just mentioning, a Nico rig could be a great way to fish this one and then keep the Bellows Gill as that standard weightless rig like I used it last year. So, Rich, with a donation in the house. I wish I was on StreamYard so that I could highlight that. Thank you so much, man. You throw me $1.50 and then you said thanks for the entertainment. Have a good night. Off to bed. Well, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for the donation. Have a great night's sleep. And if I don't talk to you before your tournament's over, good luck in the tournament, man. Have a great weekend. Thank you for your entertainment as well. Your live stream last night was awesome. So, yeah, the Thunderhawk Grenade is an interesting bait. It comes with these eyes on it. Now, I don't know if that's going to make any sort of impact, but um, very interesting in that it is such a blatant knockoff. It says on the back of this package, the grenade was created to mimic a wounded bait fish in the water and trigger the predator instinct in a bass. Thunderhawk also implemented our indestructible plastic in the grenade to create action and durability never seen before. The grenade excels while utilized on a free rig. Now, does it really? Because I would assume that a bait like this is going to float, and free rig baits need to have a slow float or a sinking action on them uh, on a free rig, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's just going to hang there in the water column above the weight after the weight hits the bottom. Like, I don't know that I see this as a free rig bait, but it says, however, the grenade can also be used on a Texas rig, drop shot, jig trailer, Carolina rig, and many other fish catching techniques. Those all sound like decent ways to throw the bait. A jig trailer is not a way that I envisioned throwing the bellows gill, but could see throwing the grenade um, just out of, versatility, durability purposes, because I feel like if I didn't like that, then I could pull it off the jig and still rig it another way or two without ruining the baits that come in the package. So um, that is one big reason that I got this bait, was to play around with it and see how else I might like to throw this style of bait. And I say style of bait because the bellows gill has been wildly popular, I will say, since it came out like a couple seasons ago. And as you're seeing with other categories, like, say, the dark sleeper, they're becoming categories of baits. Same with the chatterbait trailer. All of a sudden, it's possible that this profile could become something that a lot of soft plastic bait makers start producing. So I say right now that it's a direct copy, a blatant knockoff, but it's entirely possible that in a few years from now, that this type of bait, this profile, will exist from a half a dozen manufacturers. And I could be wrong about that, but we'll have to see. Time will tell. So this color pattern is not listed. Green pumpkin, red flake. So that makes sense. I picked up two colors of this bait: green pumpkin, red flake, and bone. So in my opinion, this bone color is a bed fishing bait. That is why I got it and what I plan to do with it. So whether I throw it on a Nico rig, I throw it on a Ned rig, throw it on a Texas rig or a shaky head, something of the sort, I want this thing down, nose down, rooting around in the bed, maybe on a drop shot, uh, just hovering over the bed. But I think this is going to make a wicked bed fishing bait, and the white color is something that's going to allow me to be able to see this bait from a ways away. So that is literally what I had in mind when picking up this bait, and then I decided to get that second color and really do kind of a side by side comparison with the bellows gill. And I don't want to completely throw shade at Thunderhawk for for knocking off the bellows gill, because they did really make a point to make this out of an elastomer style soft plastic, which I think in itself makes this thing compelling. That's the one major downside to the bellows gill, is that bang for the buck is hard to justify. I think you spend $9 or $10 a pack for 5 of the 3.8 inch. And this bait right here, do I have an invoice? Can I get an invoice? $5.99 for 4. So you're spending $1.50 per bait. They're cheaper than the bellows gill, and by a while. But they're gonna last probably 5 or 10 times as long. So that is a big reason that I got it. And now there's one other thing in the box that I almost didn't notice. I forgot that I had ordered this, and you wouldn't know what it is because it's so damn small. This was a huge mistake. So this is Mend It. But look at the size of this container. So listen, I have bought Mend It before, and because of the price difference when you jump up in the size of the bottle, it really is in your best interest to get the biggest size. It's like a 2 or a 4-ounce bottle, and it's like a giant bottle of nail polish essentially. And it lasts a really long time. But that is a problem because after 1 or 2 seasons, the stuff started drying out for me. So I didn't even use it all. It got all dried up. I think you have to store it in a refrigerator, which, please, I have a family. I'm not going to put my Mend It in the fridge. So I wanted more Mend It, but they only make it in a one size smaller that's like half the size of that big bottle, and then one size significantly smaller, which is this guy. And whole not only am I going to lose this in 5 seconds, but I think you could apply this, I don't know, 5 or 10 times. That is all you get with this thing. This is the small. I had no idea that this is what I'd be getting for $4. Yeah, single application use. That's the Mend It bottle for the mule fishing donkey tail junior. Unbelievable. I don't even know what to do with that. I'm going to consider it lost and gone. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's like if you went to Bruce said perfume dram bottle size. Yeah, if you went and you got a sample of a perfume or a cologne at a retail store, that's what you get. It's not even a quarter of an ounce. That's ridiculous. Robert says, I like the swiveling hooks on the Thunderhawk Sergeant. I do too. I was tempted to get that bait as well, but you guys know that my lipless crankbait box is overcrowded at the moment. It is just the swiveling hook hangers that really appeal to me about that bait. And so I did not pull the trigger on that bait just yet, and we'll have to see if I do. But you guys already know what's going to happen for the next 30 seconds. You got to hang tight while I pee in this cup. I'm not going anywhere other than just out of view so that it's not super awkward. So listen to the clicking sound of the security system. I'll be right back. Well, that's a lot of pee. Shoo! That is a lot of pee. So speaking of free rig, I think I work these baits from Chase Baits on a free rig this year. You know, they make this kicking craw version, and they make more of a beaver style. I've got both of them, and never quite thought of them specifically as a free rig bait, but I think that's where they're gonna totally excel. And so anyway, Robert, I agree. Swiveling hook hangers are awesome. I like them on pretty much every bait that you could think of. That is the reason that I got this tail spinner from 6 Cents, the gyro, more than anything. And I've got it on a handful of baits. Here's another one, the Jackal Gantarelle. I think a big reason that this bait is awesome is the swiveling hook hangers. Aside from the paint jobs and the action and the fact that this bait floats and is something that you can modify in a few different ways. But swiveling hook hangers really are an underrated feature that should exist on more baits altogether. For some reason, I think most people assume that it's just really difficult to figure out, and perhaps it is. But there's enough lure manufacturers out there now that do it that I'm kind of surprised it hasn't become a little bit more mainstream. On hard baits, like why doesn't it exist on more top water poppers? There's a popper on the market that I am seriously considering picking up for that specific reason, and it's made by Megabass. Matt knows about it for sure, and it is called the Swing Hot. It's a JDM saltwater popper that is mostly meant to walk more than pop, and it's a small profile bait, but it has swiveling hook hangers, and I think that's super cool. So I am with you, Robert, that is underrated. It's a sweet feature to have in any bait, period. Daniel says, have you seen the Geek Crack Bellows swim bait, Tyler? Yeah, Matt sent me something on Instagram about it. Looks like he did to you as well earlier this week. And I will say, the picture of it didn't look that appealing, but like Matt said, the swim video looked very good. So I don't know. I don't know what to think, man, because that big profile on it is very bluegill-esque. But if I'm not mistaken, it's got the wide body and the paddle tail coming off the back. So it's not going to swim long ways like tall, but rather wide, right? I think. I can just pull up Matt's message real quick and show all of you guys who are in here right now. Wait a second. Maybe I'm wrong about that. You see that EWG hook is rigged from the bottom tall ways. So here she is swimming. From the top, it looked wide. But maybe not. Look at how good that kick is on the swim. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. Wait a second. No, you're right. The hook slot. Look at the orientation of the hook. So maybe that's not actually the hook on the side, but wait a sec. So it is on the bottom. I'm a little confused, but I think based on this picture, it actually does have that tall profile instead of wide, and it looks good. So I will probably get them at some point because there's not a lot of bluegill profile soft plastic swim baits. The gilly is one of them out there um, that does swim relatively true. Um, it can sometimes run a little funky on you. There's not a lot of other baits that have this tall profile in them and a good kicking action. So I'm curious about it, and we'll probably try it. I wonder when it's going to hit the market, honestly. Matt, do you have any idea when it's going to hit the market? I've got one other beer here, but I don't know that I'm going to drink the whole thing on stream since we've been on for an hour and 42 minutes as it is. What else do you guys want to talk about right now? Matt says, has that it's if it's that stable without a weighted swim bait hook, that's impressive. Yeah, honestly, it looked like that was not a weighted swim bait hook. So definitely uh impressive to say the least. John says you have to weight the gilly with a nail sinker to keep it straight up. Uh, no, I haven't found that to be the case. I've only fished it a couple of times, but no, I have not had any issues with it running true weightless. It's just sometimes you have to kind of give it a pull through the water, and it seems relatively inconsistent. I believe you though that if you use a nail sinker, um, that it might run a little bit more true, but it doesn't have a slot in it telling you exactly where to throw a nail weight, right? I mean, where would you put it in the belly if it's standing tall? Would you put it in the belly or in the nose? Yeah, Daniel, I don't know. Um, if it has just one hook slot on the top or if it's got it on top and bottom, because that would be cool if then you could actually rig it, once it wore out a little bit, if then you could flip it upside down. But obviously, it's going to have a paddle tail that is meant to be swum one way. But as is the case with most paddle tail swim baits, you can rig them upside down and they will still swim correctly, just not with the same action. But profile is the one thing to be concerned about with most soft plastic swim baits, right? The profile is usually different upside down than it is right side up because most baits have a little bit more of a keeled belly to them. Um, though some are even the opposite, which is interesting. So that bellows swim bait looks like it's the same top and bottom. So I would hope that they've got that. Well, Daniel, thank you for removing that Nate HDXYZ comment. Good Lord, I didn't even see that in there. But I don't know why we've got bots in here. John says you have to put it on the bottom / belly opposite to the EWG hook. Interesting. It doesn't quite make sense to me, but if the bait is standing tall, right? It's like this, not like that. You're rigging the hook in the side, not up and down, right? So you rig the bait sideways, EWG. Do you put the weight up in here? Or are you saying you would put it through the middle of the bait, which probably isn't thick enough to fit a nail sinker? So it would need to go up through tall ways in the bait. Matt says if you look at the bottom part of the EWG, it looks like it's resting in a crevice, which I think is the hook slot, but probably not too deep where it will affect the durability. Well, if you're talking about the bellows baits, durability is an issue no matter what. So you know, that's something that you just kind of have to overcome when you pick up those baits and give them a shot, and just know that realistically, you're not getting them for durability. You're getting them for action, as well as the scent. They're just nice baits, straight up. So I look forward to seeing what else they put out, but I'm not going to be fully on the bandwagon that is all things geek crack. Um, you know, I will probably, when all's said and done, have a few or a handful of their baits, but probably not all of them. And a lot of that is because of the price tag. If they were able to come down in price and approach the US market in a way that, say, Keitech has done, then they might develop more of like a true loyal fan and user of their baits in me, like Keitech has done. Most of their baits are in that like $5-6 range, and I've gotten on board with the vast majority of baits that they have. But when you're spending $9 or $10 a pack and getting fewer in a pack, of those, and they're even less durable than what you get with Keitech, it's hard. I'll just say it that way. You say that's what I do on my Amakatsu Javelin gill. It's in the belly under horizontal. Interesting. Dennis says I fish a fluke on my jackhammers and it works just fine. Yep, totally does. In fact, I made a video 2 or 3 years ago at this point with like you know, top 10 chatterbait trailers, something like that. And a fluke was on that list. I definitely do recommend a fluke style bait as a chatterbait trailer. As I mentioned already, I I do use this Elastec style fluke. It's the Strike King Z2, made by Z-Man, sold by Strike King. So it's their 3X material. And yeah, I really like it. I've in the past I've used Zoom flukes as well. I just the main problem with Zoom flukes is that the tails are often bent up straight out of the pack, which is a problem, and they also are not super durable. And the belly is really deep, so they tear pretty easily, and you kind of run through them. So it works just fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with throwing a fluke on the back of a chatterbait. In fact, you do get a fairly erratic action with a fluke, especially if you are fishing the bait on a more erratic style retrieve and you're speeding it up or you're popping your rod, and it will make that bait dart and hunt a little bit more dramatically than you'd get with most other trailers. So I agree. Great chatterbait trailer uh, is the old Zoom fluke. Nothing wrong with that, man. Robert says my blade mods are up in the chat just after moving on. Sorry, I was slow responding. Uh, I'm not at a keyboard, just thumbs on my phone. All right, well, let me try and scroll up if I can get to it, Robert. I'm sorry about that, man. I see you say if you trim back a frog skirt, first tie a knot on each side, then slide the new knot into the bait, trim above the original knot. Now you have a replacement frog skirt. Yep, good suggestion. I missed a lot of those comments when Rich was on here. So sorry about that, guys. Okay, you say for the cutoff mod, I flatten the top before bending the blade corner to corner. Wait a second. Okay, so for the cutoff action mod, you flatten the top before bending the blade corner to corner. I don't even know what you mean by that, but that's interesting. Is that all you said? Favorite wacky hook? VMC weedless wacky? Nico finesse. Nice. Yep. John says, speaking of Epic Eric, have you tried the Bass Pro egg crankbait? Similar to the Griffin Zero, comes in bigger sizes. Yeah. Speaking of, I fished that bait today. I heard about it from Epic Eric specifically and went out looking for this bait. It comes in two sizes. One is really big and weighs almost an ounce, and one is this smaller size, which is relatively small. You know, it's like a 2-inch bait, not even like a 1.5 size square bill. So I've got two of them sitting here and one tied onto my rod up in the garage. But let's compare it to, say, here's the Hybrid Hunter Junior, and here's the egg. This is a small bait. Here's the Depths Evoke 1.2 small bait, roughly the same size. So this is a small bait, but it weighs almost a half an ounce. So really cool bait. However, huge design flaw in this bait are the hooks. And we talked about this before, and it's not just the type of hooks on them, because they almost have this style of hook that Matt was referring to. He mentioned an owner hook that is designed like this, and one that comes on maybe the DRT clash baits. But see how two of these points are in line with one another, so that this thing will lay flat against the bait, and then literally you've only got one hook running below the bait on that middle hook hanger. But check this out. These guys hook up with one another very easily. And not only that, but these hooks are probably a size 8 and a size 6. These are really small hooks. And the main issue is that this hook hanger in the middle is way too far back. This thing needs to be a lot closer to the bill itself. So what I've come to realize is that you can either take both hooks off and use like a size 4, maybe even a size 2 hook on the middle, or you go all the way down to almost like a size 10 treble hook on front and back in order to get these to not tangle together. But you get a solid knocker style rattle in this thing and a really good wobbling action. It's a fat body, and this thing runs super shallow. So if you fish it slowly, anywhere from a slow to medium slow retrieve, this thing runs on the surface as a wake bait. If you fish it medium or faster, it will start diving. And if you burn it, this thing will run about a foot or a foot and a half deep. It is a shallow diving bait, and it's a good one. So tried it out today for the first time, actually. I'm going to be fishing this red one here in the next week or two, right up on the bank where I know that crawdads are, and when I know that fish are feeding around the full moon on craws and in the pre-spawn. So this is going to be the time to utilize a bait like this, or the fire craw jackhammer, or something of the sort. So I will be throwing the kitchen sink at them, you know, the LV150 in a craw pattern, you know, other square bills and flat-sided crankbaits, maybe even the BDS Magic 2.2. bunch of shallow diving baits up close to the bank to target pre-spawn fish eating crawdads around the full moon. So anywhere from Saturday to Monday of this weekend and into early next week, fishing is going to be good around the full moon. And if you have a chance to get out, you should. I might have a chance to Sunday and or Monday, and we'll be trying to for sure. Saturday, not so much. I'm going to be with my kids. The original posts are even farther back, man. You said you bend bottom corner to top corner with needle nose pliers. That sounds dramatic. That's a lot of bending to do. I mean, why not just remove the blade at that point, dude? Or use a swim jig? How do you actually get it to do anything if you're essentially destroying the blade? John says, I once found a jackhammer while bank fishing. The trailer on it was like a fluke, but with a longer tail and no split in it. Um, yeah, so probably something like a hog farmer spunk shad. Probably not, but I don't know. Matt says, I've used the Sakamata shads on a chatterbait. It was too crazy. The tail was wagging, too unnatural, looked kind of funny. Um, Yet it doesn't seem like a great idea to use a bait that costs $2 or $3 per bait and is really salted and fragile on the back of a chatterbait because it's not going to last very long. But I can also see what you're saying about the action just being a little bit too out of control. That sounds wild. Yeah, Matt was saying that the owner ST35MF hooks are essentially the same style as what you get on the Bass Pro Egg, where two of the three hook points are in line with one another. It looks like a treble hook from here, but then all of a sudden when I show you this, you notice that these two hook points are in line. Daniel said, I think he's just talking about the bottom or the longer side part of the blade if you read his first post. I didn't read his first post, couldn't find it, but let's see what you're talking about. Not bending all edges of the blade, but just the bottom or the longer side part of the blade. Okay, so folding these corners in essentially to make a skinny blade. Is that what you're saying? You work it to make it vibe sporadically. The notion of the lure doing something different to draw a reaction bite. Interesting. So, yeah, so that's something that most people haven't thought about doing. And I wonder if that would be a way to get around Z Man's um, patent, or if Z Man most likely has multiple patents, and the main one is the direct blade to head connection. So I bet you couldn't get around that. But the other one, I think, is the hexagonal blade shape. So, most other companies have a different blade shape, but interesting that you're talking about bending the corners and making this a narrower blade and one that is shaped differently. Um, yeah, I'm surprised you don't see a little bit more of that in today's market. For the most part, people think chatterbait, they think Z-Man, they think of a hexagonal blade. Um, and I wonder what it would be like if you had all different shapes of blades and widths of blades. I mean, sure, you could think about other bladed jigs, and like the Strike King. Oh, what's it called? The Rage blade has a rounded bill to it. Right? This dude here has a totally different shape that is narrow at the bottom, rounded at the top, not hexagonal whatsoever. Some other blades have slightly different shapes, but really Z-Man is known for that hexagonal blade. This was a bait that I really did not like, and that's that Terminator, concave shaped blade. This fish head spin is one that I've not been a fan of. And not just, I have a couple of these. This one I didn't fish, did not bend, but you see that it's got a very traditional, like, stock blade shape on there and a split ring connection. I don't like that. Now, this guy, on the other hand, has a different shape to it. And this is the Booyah Melee. That's a unique shape. Also unique design because it's got a direct connection, but it's inside the head and not to, the eye or the line tie, if you will. So this is like a hybrid between a traditional chatterbait and what you get out of the Rage blade, in that the blade is stopped by the lead itself and almost acts as a little bit of a weed guard, so that this thing comes up and over wood and through a little bit heavier cover as a result. But you got my head spinning a little bit, Robert. Matt says, so no one can make a chatterbait that hits the head due to Z-Man's patent. Theoretically, but not exactly, right? That's a general concept, but oh, I thought I had him sitting right here. Where? I don't know where I put him. The Picasso bladed jig has a way around that. The blade doesn't travel quite as much and make all that much contact necessarily, but see, is it in here? Yes. All right. So here's the Picasso. Again, it's got more of that stock shaped blade on it, but the way that this blade is attached is somewhat halfway in between a split ring and direct. So I guess you're right that this thing doesn't make nearly as much contact as a jackhammer, but it does actually make contact and have a really heavy vibration to it. So, um, theoretically, what you're saying is true, Matt. That because people aren't able to make a chatterbait with a true direct head to blade connection, that you don't find really other bladed jigs on the market that allow for that direct contact because of that separation that you get from a split ring or some other way of attaching the blade to that eye of the jig. But yeah, of course, Nori's and a bunch of other JDM companies do because that patent doesn't exist in Japan or in other countries. It's a US patent. So there's a reason that you can't buy that Nori's, bladed jig or Amakatsu or, 10 other companies' bladed jigs here in the US. And that's because Z Man is all over it and preventing that because they can enforce their patent. So you'll notice that if you go over to Japan, every company makes a bladed jig like a jackhammer with a direct blade to head connection. But that violates Z Man's patent here in the US. And so they can't bring them here and sell them pretty much at all. I mean, Z Man has been patrolling the market like crazy. And so that's part of why I don't talk about this very often, is because it does have that direct blade to head connection. And I was able to just luckily get it when I got it. And now they're no longer available in the US. Um, it was just one of those things where I got lucky. A place was selling them when they technically shouldn't have been, and they no longer are. John says, "Bye, folks. Got to sleep. Past midnight over here." I hear you, dude. No problem. Thank you for hanging out. Hope you have a great rest of your night and enjoy your weekend. Although I will probably be on either tomorrow night or Saturday night. So keep your eyes peeled. Uh, I've got one more package coming. This one from 6 cents. No more of the gyros, but I've got a few other baits to check out. And that one other bait from Tackle Warehouse, I don't know if it's going to make it by the end of the weekend, so it might have to wait till next week. But I will be back on in the next 2 days. I just don't know whether it's going to be tomorrow night or Saturday night. So have a great rest of your night, man. And Matt says, Tyler, have you ever tried the Nori's Hula Chat? Looks good. I've heard great reviews about it. No, and yes, I have also heard great things, and it looks good as well. I just don't. It's not readily available. You know, I've heard Epic Eric talk about it before, and I've seen it one or two places, but I don't have a bunch of JDM chatterbaits. Otherwise, I would probably talk about them somewhat more frequently. But the Amakatsu, the moth chatter is supposed to be a good one. There's a lot of JDM chatterbaits out there. Um, but yeah, Daniel says I love Z-Man chatterbaits, but it does suck that they have a lockdown on that because Z-Man didn't come up with the original design or patent. They just bought it from the guy. Yep. I mean, it is a shame in a way, but it's also genius on their part. And I mean, they're making a killing on it, have been for a long time. So all the power to them. I kind of wish I was in their shoes. because they're able to work with companies like Evergreen to make the Jackhammer. They're able to work with companies like Thunder Cricket to license their patent, or companies like Strike King to license the Thunder Cricket. And maybe the same will be true of the bladed jig that's coming out from Berkeley. I haven't seen enough about that bait, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. I just don't know if it's got a direct blade to head connection. But Z-Man has done a really good job of keeping that patent live and enforcing it as well. So Robert says, I also manually wiggle the blade on the head to loosen the action. Yeah. Yeah, that's smart. I think a lot of blades on chatterbaits or bladed jigs come with a relatively um, small hole that is drilled where it goes here. And I think theoretically, either by wiggling it or by using a really skinny drill bit, you could really loosen up this hole and allow for that blade to travel more easily. Um, I assume that's what you were talking about, but it's possible that you were also talking about the actual eyelet and loosening that up. I think there are some bladed jigs out there that those are too tight from the get-go and can prevent freedom of movement for sure. Bruce, you shot me a message on Instagram. Okay, cool. Appreciate you doing that. We will continue our conversation offline when this is all done. So thank you for doing that. Daniel, you're right. It is good for Z-Man, but bad for us as consumers because we kind of just have to trust that Z-Man is keeping up on R&D and putting out the best possible product that they can. And in general, I think that they've done a really good job. They've got a really wide spectrum in terms of their lineup of bladed jigs and chatterbaits on the market. So, when you look at all the different shapes of the heads and theoretically where and what you would do with each of those styles of chatterbait, I think we've got our bases covered for the most part. So, ranging all the way from the big blade down to the absolute smallest, tiny little guys, the skirtless. Why do I always forget the name of this tiny little Ned rig sized chatterbait? The flashback mini. The mini max. Both of the freedom chatterbaits, the new cross eyes. They make a ton of different chatterbaits that really cover the whole spectrum. So I don't feel like we're being deprived all that much because technically they brought it mainstream to us and have done a good job of evolving that category of bait. Project Z, good one. Yeah, I've talked about the difference between the Project Z and the cross eyes before. I'll just briefly touch on that again right now because I think it's worth talking about and an interesting thing to compare because I still have the Project Z in like my go-to box, even though over the last year or so I've really started using the cross eyes more than the Project Z, and I use the weedless Project Z more than the regular. I just don't see a real reason to throw the regular Project Z that's not the weedless. It does have a longer shank hook on it than other chatterbaits, so I'll give it that. But it's got a molded lead keeper on it, which isn't ideal. It has that. It's not even a banded skirt, but it's that flared out skirt that you know, none of which are ideal. But it has more of a swim jig style head, and it's best to be swum straight through the water column. But this thing tracks at a little bit of an angle, like so. So this thing doesn't run truly horizontal in the water. It tracks almost like so. And I find that to be a little bit funny. But the cross eyes, as you can see, is just a more versatile design. And the snap came off of it just a minute ago. I don't know where it went, but that's weird. I guess I was grabbing it enough to where that thing just popped off. So, huh. But what you'll notice is, sure, the weed guard is a totally different material that is more customizable and also a little bit more, I don't know, I don't know if durable is the right word, but more effective in being a weed guard. But the head shape of this bait is more of a true Arky style jig head, which most people know that an Arky style jig head is super versatile. Is great for flipping, great for swimming, uh, great for hopping, and comes through a wide variety of cover. So when you get that combined with this style of weed guard, this guy is an awesome little bait. Kind of underrated, whereas the Project Z, in my opinion, is more of like a true swim jig with that weed guard on there. Very good bait, and I've caught some really good fish on it, so it's still a confidence bait of mine. But kind of right away after getting some experience with the cross eyes, I just like what I can do with it a little bit more. um so you say it's got a different color or two that you like. Interesting. Matt says that got the CFL, still haven't used it. Yeah. CFL is it's an interesting one. I haven't put quite enough time into it. I've fished it a handful of times, but in my opinion, it is a deep water bait. Right? They make it in some heavier weights, but because it is a football head, I see this as a wobble head, a swing head style bait, just with that extra action of the chatterbait blade on it. And so you can rig multiple style hooks on here, whether you want your bait to be exposed or weedless, is totally up to you. But I see this as a bottom bouncing along rocks type of bait as opposed to anything else. Um, Still mostly on a straight retrieve, but you're going to get more vibration, more action, in addition to that deflection that you get out of a wobble head. And you can use the same types of baits as trailers and everything like that. So just kind of a 1-2 punch for a traditional wobble head that you'd be fishing in the same areas with kind of that sparse or smaller rock on bottom in kind of, I don't know, mid depths. I tend to use it in say 6 to 12 feet of water. Same places that I would be throwing like a wiggle wart style crankbait. Man, the Duratec stuff actually has a pretty strong scent on it. It's relatively appealing. I wouldn't say it smells like green pumpkin exactly. It's definitely something shrimpy, fishy, what have you, but guys, we got 12 people still in here. 18 thumbs up. I appreciate you guys. I've been on for 2 hours and 22 minutes. I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you guys finding some humor in that little comment about the green pumpkin scent. Not quite ripe yet, but I look forward to one day finally buying some Berkeley, Japan baits and letting you guys know whether I truly find it to smell like green pumpkin or not. Or maybe Matt and I just need to do a trade. Matt, if you're going to place an order anytime soon at one of your favorite JDM retailers and want to buy an extra pack or two on my behalf, and then we can either trade or I will Venmo you for you to send them to me. We should work that out. But guys, I am going to get out of here. Thank you so much for your time and your support. And look out for me to go live anytime in the next 48 hours. And when I say anytime, I mean in 22 hours from now or in 2 days from now. Okay. Tomorrow night or Saturday night, I'm going to be back on. So please do keep your eyes peeled. And I will see you then with another unboxing. But have yourselves a great rest of your Thursday night, Friday tomorrow, and see you soon.